I'm Christina Tepchen.
I'm Aaron Bond.
I'm Margaret Schroeder.
And I'm Jasmine Jones.
And we're from Kakehashi High School. As we get into our presentation, I will first explain what the Kakehashi project is. And so these words are coming from the Kakehashi website from the About page. So the JACL Kakehashi program is a type of foreign relations program that is coordinated by the Japanese American Citizens League, JACL, and the Japan International Cooperation Center, JICE. And this is supported by funding from the Japan Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and participants range from being 18 to 25 years old, high school to college students. Selected participants for this program will attend a 9-day trip to Japan where they will visit a number of historical educational sites, experience traditional and cultural activities, and participate in lectures and workshops. Each trip will visit Tokyo and one other city. This is by providing participants with better understanding of Japan through a variety of fields, including politics, economics, and culture. The Kakehashi project builds relationships between Japan and Japanese Americans. The Kakehashi project alumni are encouraged to become effective advocates in enhancing U.S. and Japan relations. Their objectives are 1, to promote mutual trust and understanding among the people of Japan and the USA to build a basis for future friendship and cooperation. 2, to promote a global understanding of Japan's economy, society, history, diverse culture, politics, and foreign policy. And 3, to disseminate information on Japan's attractiveness through communication devices, including social networking sites. So, our initial thought upon being selected as participants of this trip, we all had a similar perception of Japan. With the majority of us students not having been to Japan before, we all imagined Japan to be this extraordinary, beautiful country filled with high technology, anime-infested streets, a super enforced recycling regimen, favorable food, and that the Japanese students were these hardcore academic-centered students. We believe that Japanese students studied every single day and night, super smart in that they were able to hatch a chicken without a shell, and are very efficient and independent, that they don't have janitors to clean their classrooms and that they're the ones to clean it. These perceptions were all made from our own knowledge about Japan and from our studies in Japanese class. We also thought that the people of Japan were going to be very quiet and conservative, and that communication was going to be a huge barrier. We weren't really expecting to interact with random strangers on the street, and so we were the most nervous meeting our host families. Most of the students going to Japan were able to host a Japanese student, so we already had some connection with our hosts. But we were going to meet their families, and that's when our Japanese might not be up to par to satisfy their expectations, and that they weren't going to be very welcoming. Most of these initial perceptions came true, especially the positive ones, and then the negative ones made us look at Japan in a very different light.
On to what we learned in Japan. So, once landing in Japan, we were instantly immersed in the culture that many Japanese people are proud of. For example, one of our realizations was just how clean their streets were. A lot of us do not realize the effort Japan puts into maintaining cleanliness, such as how there are no trash cans on the streets, so everyone is responsible for their own garbage. Throughout our trip, we visited a variety of cultural and historical locations, such as the Edo Tokyo Museum, where we learned about Tokyo's rich history, and the Okinawa Peace Memorial dedicated to the Battle of Okinawa. Our knowledge and understanding of Japan was also widened through cultural experiences that gave us a first-hand look at what makes Japan unique. One of our most memorable experiences was our homestay program with students from Naha Kokusai in Okinawa. On our last day with our host families, we visited their school. While sitting in on their classes, we realized that we had more in common with the students than we first thought. As Christina said, we imagined that they would be super studious and intensely academic, but in reality, they relished their free time and even enjoyed many American singers such as we did. Before the trip, many of us worried about the language barrier and feared that it would prevent us from communicating with our hosts. However, even after the first night, we realized that it did not need to worry. Even with some occasional misunderstandings that are inevitable with language barriers, that didn't stop us from connecting with the students and families who so kindly opened their homes to us. Some students bonded over playing cards, singing karaoke, or just having long, meaningful conversations. We learned that even with our cultural differences, we were still able to bridge the gap and create long-lasting bonds that we never want to forget.
This brings up the question, why are we here today? There are three primary purposes that we hope to help achieve. 1. We want to cultivate international relationships, a key step towards global peace building. For example, at the Okinawa Peace Memorial, we were fortunate enough to hear a first-hand account of the Battle of Okinawa. This experience impacted us greatly because it illustrated what can happen when relationships fall apart. Only by maintaining friendships and alliances across countries and cultures can we ensure such tragedies do not repeat themselves. Our visit also helped to spread a message of peace in that we must be able to forge past our differences in tough times. This was presented to us through the fact that despite previous conflicts between Japan and the US, our host families and the people of Japan treated us with great kindness. We as a society can learn from such displays of friendship to build a peaceful and prosperous future for us all. This brings me to the second why. 2. A second goal of ours is to facilitate a cross-cultural exchange between Japan and America. Through our experience with the Kakehashi project, we have come to understand that our two countries do have their distinct cultures, but there's a lot that we can learn from one another. For example, as Aaron mentioned before, there's an emphasis on cleanliness in Japan that the US could learn from to decrease littering and make public areas more enjoyable. On top of that, Japan cultivates a culture of hospitality, as shown by the fact that we were welcomed wherever we went. To further showcase their commitment to hospitality, the Japanese practice giving omiyage, small gifts, to their guests, and our host families followed suit, even though they already were providing us with food, housing, and their time. In America, it's more common to do something in exchange for self-profit. We can learn from such practices in Japan to strengthen our community bonds through selfless giving. By spreading these values across the world, we can work towards a more tranquil and successful global community. This brings me to our third and final reason. Sharing our various experiences allows us the opportunity to recognize the underlying values within all of us. A lot of us worried that language barriers would prove to be a huge problem, as mentioned before. However, despite the inevitability of their existence, nothing stopped us from being able to bond with the people we met. Such experiences sparked the realization that even though cultural barriers do exist, there is a deeper connection that all people share, indicating that all people aren't so different after all. Through sharing our realizations today, we hope to spark a greater interest in encouraging global peace and cooperation and an increased understanding of Japanese culture.
All right, and so this brings us to the purpose of our presentation and our proposal. And so one of the main questions we asked ourselves after arriving back in America was how can we achieve and actualize these three main purposes that Margaret just discussed. So while on the Kakehashi trip, we created an action plan on how we would continue to try and maintain these positive international relations between Japan and the US once we arrived back home. And we used this action plan that we created as the foundation for our proposal today. So the main thing we noticed was that the city of Mukilteo does not have an international sister city. So for example, if you look at our neighboring city Everett, just north of us, they have a sister city relationship with Iwakuni, Japan. And if you look south of us, Edmonds has a relationship with Hekinan, Japan. So we believe that it will be a valuable endeavor for Mukilteo to also seek out a sister city, as it will provide new, exciting experiences for the residents of Mukilteo and will make us collectively more globally involved. And as mentioned before, our cultural exchange to Japan ignited our passion to continue facilitating the hospitable relationship that currently exists between Japan and the US. Or as the direct translation Kakehashi, meaning to travel over a bridge, as Christina said, this pertains to we want to serve as the bridge between these two beautiful cultures. So this is why we want to have a sister city specifically in Japan. Now, having a sister city would mean we could set up exchange trip and gift exchange opportunities for adults, young adults, and children, so people of all ages. And we could also set up a sister city office and monument in Mukilteo to honor our sister city and vice versa. So most importantly, we want to increase cultural awareness across both cities of each other's cultures. So we can achieve this by setting up different activities in Mukilteo accessible to everyone that would give an in-person, real-life experience of the culture. So for example, when we were in Japan, we participated in a traditional calligraphy and karate workshop, which was both very fun and very informative and gave us hands-on experience of the culture. So after our class discussed this issue among ourselves and we looked on the official Sister City website, we decided that we wanted to make a committee to continue this important conversation and hopefully eventually implement this plan. Now, ultimately, however, we believe that finding Mukilteo a sister city is an important task that will stem far beyond the scope of our classroom, which is why we hope to get the City Council involved in this process to maximize the positive impact and emphasize the importance to our community. Now, we are asking the City Council to join our committee and help make finding Mukilteo a sister city a reality. So, thank you all for coming and listening. Yeah. We'll continue